Commercial cattle parlance talk, he's got a small frame. In other words, he isn't tall. In other words, there isn't a lot of blue sky underneath his belly either. So that's part of ecology too. He's about 1,900 pounds, 1,800 pounds, which is getting big, but that isn't 3,000.
Can you tell us what's your breeding, selection, criteria, philosophy?
We have a crossbred cow breeding. He happens to be 50% Angus and 50% Tarentaise.
Okay.
And that Tarentaise is a little known breed, but it does some things. They're known for really good milk production and really good feet conformation. So I haven't treated a foot rot case 12, 13 years.
So how do you decide when you're replacing bulls? What's your criteria?
When we first started with our cattle, every place is different. When we first started with our cattle, I started with about 6 different lines of cows. I've dwindled them since, but that provided a lot of diversity. So when I select for that bull, for example, I happen to like his mother. I liked everything about her, her udder, her everything about her. And then lastly, if I think I want to keep a bull, we keep our own bulls for right now. We're getting to the point where we need to actually get some more different blood, but we're not quite there yet. On top of that sort of subjective criteria, we actually test these bulls. We do a genetic screen on them for things like feed efficiency, tenderness, marbling, stayability. There's a whole panel that we do that says this is what the genetic potential is, and they have all these genetic potential marked out.
But you raised most of your own bulls.
We have so far. We started with brought in some bulls, and that was it. So we're still able to sort of mix and match, and for better or worse, it seems to work pretty well. But we're getting to the point now where we're gonna have to go and get some other bulls, because he's starting to get a little bit older, but he still tests well. And
well, you mentioned stayability, milk, foot. Do you look at weaning weight at all?
No, not particularly. I look at finished product. I want the finished product. I would rather have a very fat, on grass, 1,000-pound heifer to kill than a 1,300-pound steer that doesn't have a lick of fat on his body.
So you're not selling at weaning?
No.
Weaning weight's not important?
No. Well, I like it.
Sure.
But
it's those that...
it's the end product.
People are going to buy that
right.
You're interested
because like Jane said in the pre-interview, we're elevating people by giving them the best that we can possibly give them. We're elevating them by giving them something that's not full of chemicals, full of hormones, full of antibiotics. We're elevating people, and it's a community as much as anything else. And that's what all this industrial efficiency is destroyed. Person to person interaction. And hearing the stories of people who couldn't eat beef, or their kids wouldn't eat beef, and now all of a sudden they like beef. And the only difference is the beef itself. So there's more to it. Like I just talked about, the unseen ecological impacts. And that's capital. That's valuable wealth that's being destroyed when you see riparian area getting knocked down like that. Or that you don't see the effluent from the feedlots. You don't see the medical bills that come because of the residual, right? The flesh-eating MRSA bacteria, etc., right? That's all contributed to by an efficient system that's concentrated in such a way that it just doesn't do anything for you.
So based on where you're at now with your herd, what will you be looking for when you go to bring in some new genetics?
Well, there's a lot of different guys out there, Wes being one, Diamond D, Inderlin. There's people that have been doing this a lot longer than me. Kit Farrow down in Colorado. I'll probably stay in Montana though. I'll be looking for a bull that is not too big, has a good disposition, because I don't want mean bulls. I can't deal with something that's going to be hostile and hurt me, because I'm out here a lot alone, and when I get them in the corrals especially, there's not a lot of places to go. You never trust a bull, but at the same time, it's easier when they're not so angry that you got them in the corral that they're just unworkable. We'll be looking for long-term grass-feeding genetics as well, because there's something to a long line of history of this. You gonna fly that again, Wes? Oh, just. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Explain that.
The long history of grass-fed genetics. There are people that have been in the mindset of breaking out from the commercial grain-fed model for cattle for a long time. They've said, they've looked at this over the last 40 years, basically is how the feedlot industry developed in the last 40 years to the extent that it is now, and said, no, I don't want to participate in that. I want to be able to calve in the spring, I want to be able to wean calves, and I don't want to have to continually put hay and inputs into these animals. They need to be able to sustain themselves. So over time, I have some exceptional mama cows that don't like to come to hay if I'm feeding them hay, but that produce some of the best calves. And what I mean by best is, number one, they stay alive. Number two, they end up being finished, that is to say fat and ready to fit to slaughter earlier. Not a lot earlier, just some earlier. Now the typical commercial cow, they'll wean those babies 600-700 pounds, some of them. They'll feed them a little bit in a dry lot just like that one in the distance, and they'll bring them up to a specific weight, sell them at the specific weight, and by the time they're 13 months old, they'll be 12, 14, 1,500 pounds force fed in a feedlot and killed for beef. Ours just takes a little bit longer, but the benefits, while they're not apparent as far as time and what they think money, because it's faster to get your payment the younger you kill them, ours will just take 2 and 3 and 4 months longer. It's a patience thing. It's a harmony thing, and then you just work in those kind of lines where people have been successful with grass-fed cattle and incorporate those bulls into your herd. Buy some bred heifers, things like that, and you can bring new blood in that way as well.
In a typical year, how many months will you be feeding hay?
Typical year, 3. And that can be intermittent, December, January, and February. We've been here where I've had them on full grass by the middle of March, because we do have a lot of those tame varieties of grass, crested wheat for example, that come very early. That Russian wild rye comes very, very early. And so 3 typically. Now the last 3 winters running, and the last 2 in particular, it's been more like 4.5. It was middle of April instead of middle of March. But even in those severe winters, I've never been longer than the middle of April to feed here. About 3,800 feet.
So people looking at this probably, what's your elevation here?
About 3,800 feet.
Okay. So you see things start greening up typically March?
Yeah, at the middle and the end of March, and it's all temperature related. This year it was very slow,
Sure.
Way slow. Most of the crested wheatgrass in the hayfield, for example, doesn't even have, or just very nascent little seed head that's coming up on it.
So you talked about a comparison with commercial. What do you think your input costs are, just kind of in general, versus what you see of your neighbors that run more traditionally? Typically, you think lower?
Oh, my input costs have got to be lower. I don't own all of my own hay and equipment, so I don't have the depreciation and maintenance that comes on that. I don't have to grind my hay after I put it in a haystack, bring it out, put it through a big grinder into a big pile, then pick it up again and put it into a feed apparatus and take it out. And I don't do that for nearly as long a period of time. It was just the beginning of June that my neighbor, and God, I love the guy, but my neighbor just finished running his feeding truck, his feed wagon in June.
Right. So when we came into your place, I didn't see a lot of equipment. What do you have for tractors and such?
I got an old tractor that I got to get running just for general utility, and it hasn't run for 2 years. I've got a hay truck that actually handles round bales, and that's a 1995 Ford F-250 with a bale handler on it. And I got ATVs.
Sure.
Because I need to be able to move cattle in the scheme of rotational grazing.
So you move most things by foot or by ATV?
Yeah, or just hauler. I mean, if I hollered to those cows, or those calves that are around the house, they'd come. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that's what it takes when the field is not so large, right?
Right. So we were on the road, saw the neighbor coming by with 2 saddle horses. Do you use horses?
No, we just use ATVs. And you'll see why as we go. This place is not that rough.
Right.
And I've only been in maybe 1 or 2 places that I wish I had a horse. But I only like horses, I don't love them. I just turn the key off and that's that with that, right?
Sure.
And I maintain them a little bit, but horses have a lot of good things. They have a lot of, but I don't have that nostalgia for them that some people do. And not there's anything wrong with that. And some places, because of the ruggedness of their terrain, need it. But
sure.
So I would say that my capital and my input costs are low. Now you also drove in on your way, you drove in by a killed field down there at the corner.
Yeah.
Well, that was all cheatgrass. I don't know, that's the 2nd or 3rd time in 15 years he's ripped that up. I don't have that cost. I don't have a chisel plow and a cultivator and a seeder and a planter, and I don't have to rent it or anything, right? Those are all costs. And I don't have the soil loss and the soil impact. Remember we were talking about the detritosphere?
Right.
My favorite word that I invented. Last week I invented that. Soil is detritosphere. It's the place where dead things get processed. Detritosphere.
I like that term.
Use it.
I will.
There you go. Because that's what it's about. It's about soil building. It's about ecological balance and health.
Mark, how seasonal is your production?
Seasonal. For what?
For beef.
Oh, for my beef? It's pretty seasonal, Wes. I don't like to sell finished beef before about May, because I want them to have at least a month on some grass, green grass. And so now it'll go, from now, Monday, I got 4 beef going, and it'll go continuously through the summer, right on up until about December. So May to December is the really good portion where, frankly, the best beef is produced. But really, it's June to December, 6 months.
There was a fellow visiting scientist at MSU from Argentina, and I like the way he explained grass finished. It's gain above growth. So it's that fattening process. It's not just, I think sometimes not grass finished, but grass fed beef has gotten a bad rap because they really haven't been finished. They don't have that gain beyond growth.
Right. That's exactly right. And holding down the frame size, the height of that bull,
Sure.
is where it starts, and the mamas, right? Mm-hmm. But where you get all that blue sky under the belly, that's growth, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so you want to get them done growing so that they can put on some fat. I don't see any. We may drive by some finished cattle that are ready to go today as we get going up the road. But let's get going.
How many do you sell in a year?
We sell whatever we have. So we have 65 mamas. So right now we got 65 babies, and we've got, because we've been selling on them, 37 that are ready to be sold, right? All along the right way. So it's 65 basically.
How's your markets changed just over the last 10 years?
They've improved. In the pre-interview we talked about that and how COVID has really impacted that. And the market where we sell as part of an organic producer co-op here in Montana. We sell live animals in that. That has just been stable all along. In other words, if I had 165, I could sell 165 because I have that outlet, that market. But I'm working on, that 65, I'm up to like 40 that I sell person to person. I want to get them all sold person to person.
And you sell them live to that individual?
Yeah, the ones that go, the ones that I can't sell person to person are live.
Okay. But I mean, the whole issue of inspection at some of these local plants. So can a person buy product in Big Timber or Columbus after you bring them in?
Actually, I pre-sell them before I bring them in. So everything that I bring to Columbus or Big Timber, I got a name on that.
So they own it at the point they go into the packing?
They own it at the point that it turns into meat.
Okay.
Because I sell it by the carcass weight at that point.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is because the abattoir charges me by the carcass weight to process it.
But those are inspected plants, Pat, so he could sell it as packaged beef, even if somebody hadn't ordered a whole
Right.
beef beforehand.
But what I'm trying to get at is, if it's not an inspected plant,
Right.
you could still sell to the individual going into the plant. It's their beef.
You could do that, could do that.
Like I buy mine from Brian Goldhand, and it's a custom exempt plant, and that means that it says on every cut that it's not for resale.
Right.
But I just tell him I want a half or a quarter of cow, and he puts me in the line, and I go pick them up, it's all cut
Right.
up, nice hamburger, and it says not for resale and go back. But
Yeah.
it is inspected, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's that point about, you don't have to have inspected your own meat for your own consumption. That's just the point I'm trying to make here.
right, right. Now I do mark some for retail in those inspected plants. In fact,
State inspected, you can go. That custom exempt is the not for resale. Then you go to the state inspector,
Right.
which is retail within the state, and then
now
interstate commerce.
both the plants that I work with are USDA inspected. And that means that we can take beef across state lines for resale. So I'll go to Reno, where Jane and I moved, and we'll take 6 beef cut up to order to Nevada in the fall. That works really well.
And you get a nice trip out of it.
Because I'm from there, I get to visit the folks along the way. We stay with Jane's parents when we get to Reno, and it's just a nice thing, so flexibility.
So the plants in Big Timber and Columbus that are certified organic, does it cost you any more than a commercial?
Oh, without a doubt. Those small plants, their cutting and wrapping fees are more expensive by a lot.
But-
But not because it's organic.
But not just because it's
No, no.
organic.
That's what
Pay
I'm
the
trying to
same
say.
rate as everybody else.
All
What?
within the plant in Big Timber, you come in with an organic, this person comes in with a commercial. Does it cost you the same as that commercial going into the same plant?
Yes, it does, as far as I know. Now, here's the thing, Pat. Remember this giant institution of efficiency that we built called the beef packing plant system that broke down on us here with COVID-19? Those people are working for poor wages, elbow to elbow, and on this ridiculous production schedule that has to move these beef through 5,000 a day, 10,000 a day. Carcasses, completely processed, bigger even. These small plants actually have people who make a living working at them. They don't live in a gang apartment complex where they got 20 people in a 5-bedroom whatever. And none of the people that work in Columbus are imported immigrant labor. It's a community. And that's the other aspect of these giant plants. It takes the community out of it. They end up demanding that we bring in more immigrant labor so they can have cheap food. It's not cheaper to cut them up there, but it is cheaper when you include all the costs. Because that guy's working for $7 or $8 an hour, and he's not able to support his family for whatever. You got welfare costs.
Yeah.
They're illegal. You got all kinds of issues like that. You know what I'm saying, right?
Sure. No, I didn't articulate it very well. It's just the point that organic in the plant in Big Timber, Columbus, really doesn't cost any more to process than a commercial animal going into.
No, it's the same price,
Yeah.
regardless.